Today today I think I haven't really decided what I'm gonna do in this video, if we're gonna get into building the app in Flutter or if we're gonna start with the backend, so building the REST API. But what I thought I'd begin with is just to show you what I've done during the weekend. And so what I did, where we left off, was basically here. We were trying to figure out how to show the entire week to the user. Oh, wait. All right. So where we left off was here. We were trying to show the entire week to the user. And what I decided to do is this sort of layout where we show all of the days like this, like small little cards, and then each task is essentially going to be represented by a black little line. So this way you kind of get an overview of how many tasks you have for each day. And I think this gives kind of a good overview, at least for what I can come up with right now. And as you can see, when you press one of the days, you'll get a pop-up window type thing that will look like this. And within this, you can then scroll and go through all the different tasks for that day. And I'm not really sure what it's going to look like when you haven't pressed anything. So if you don't press any of the days, essentially right now it looks like this. So it's just a black screen basically. And I'm not really sure what we're gonna do or what way or what to have here before you actually press something. So that is one of the things that are left for that view, essentially, or for that screen. And then I decided that we're gonna have this kind of look or design for the month. So if you go to a month view, then you get all the different days like this, and then you get also the date or the actual number of the day on each card as well. And basically this is just the same as this one, but it's all the days for that month. I'm not like super happy about this design, but I think that this I like this design though, but I'm not sure how well all the different lines are gonna work to give you an overview of your week. But I think it does a pretty good job at showing you kind of how many tasks you have, and then as soon as you press one of the days, you get a more specific list of all the tasks. So then I think the combination of showing this overview and then also being able to go into each day to see what the specific tasks are, I think that combination is going to be good enough to kind of display it or to get the overview that we want. So these are the 4 screens that we've come up with so far, and what we're going to do today, I think we're going to start with just building it out in Flutter, just because that is the more fun part. The backend is also going to be the more slightly more advanced part, so I feel like that it makes sense to have that a little bit later on in this series, I guess. And even though some things that would be good to do, like if we built the REST API straight away, it would be kind of good to do that, because then you'll be able to get the data from the API in the way that you actually would in the real. Or wait. So if we were to build the REST API first, then we would be able to, when we start building the screens out in Flutter, we'd be able to actually pull the data from the API in the way that it actually would work in the final app. So that way it kind of makes sense to start with the REST API, but we can still start by just designing the layout and kind of getting the base functionality of the UI up and running. So I think that's going to be also more interesting to watch. And like I said, I feel like that makes more sense to start out with. So we're gonna start by just creating a Flutter project. We're gonna use my command that we have, and we're gonna call this to-do app. And then this does everything we want. It creates a repo, it creates the project, and it pushes everything to GitHub. All right. So this is our project. Now what we need to do is we need to create we're going to start by just creating a subdirectory called app, because we're going to have both the app and the backend in this project. So I think it makes sense to kind of split those up into one folder called app and one folder called backend. So now we're going to app, and now we do, is it Flutter create to do app? Yeah, I think that's the way to do it. All right. All done. Good. All right. Flutter project created. All right, so what I just came up with right now is that it might be interesting to also kind of create to-dos for this project in GitHub. So let's see where this one. So that we kind of build this out in a little bit more of a realistic way. Okay, create a project board name, to-do app. Oh. All right, so what we can do now is we can show you kind of the whole workflow, I guess, of how I would build this app if I was doing it in like a bigger group or a project. So what we're going to do is we're going to add, and this is GitHub where we basically save all the code, and we're going to create a couple different columns here. To do is one of them. We're going to also create a in progress, create column, add another one, testing, and then completed. The reason for doing this is that once we have this kind of list, we can then, or one of the problems when you're building something or when you're coding something, especially when you're doing it in a big group, is trying to essentially making sure that the scope of the thing that you're working on is as small as it can be, essentially, because the smaller the scope of the thing that you're working on, the less likely it is for your changes that you're making, that they are going to actually affect the entire project or affect something else in someone else's part of the code. So what we can do now is we can then go through and kind of see what are the things that we need to get done, and then we can list them here as to-dos. So for the screen, we could have actually different boards. So one board for the UI and Flutter, and then one board for the backend. And I think that's what we're gonna end up with, but today we're just gonna do the front end. So essentially what you could do then is you could divide this up into, for instance, create the navigation bar. That could be one of the to-dos. So we can create a new task here, call that create nav bar, add. All right, and then we also added it as an issue. So then we can go here, we can see a list of all the issues that we have. Yeah, so that's going to be one of them. And then what we want to do is we want to create this thing here. I'm not sure what to call that. So the thing is that this is kind of up to you or yourself, because you're just trying to make this as specific as possible, so that you're really clear about, like, okay, this is what I'm doing right now, so that you kind of, so that all the changes that you make in the code are super small, as small as they can be. And therefore it's kind of up to you to define how small of a thing that you would like to have as an issue or as a task for yourself. For instance, you could have something as small as, like, okay, add this text here, add a button here. I would probably divide it more into, like, creating the nav bar, and then maybe creating this part. I'm not really sure what to call that part. So this little fold or something, and then the button. I think that's going to be the second issue. So we're going to create a new issue. What do we call this? Let's call it create in tray top bar, I guess, and button. Okay. Yeah, so then you add it to the project. The thing is, I've been working with GitLab a little bit, so that's a different site essentially. So there's GitHub and then there's GitLab. I've been doing this in GitHub for the last like 5 months, I think. So I've kind of forgotten how to do it in GitHub, and I haven't done it that much at all in GitHub at all. So I'm not really an expert on how to do it, but now it should be added. So now we have 2 tasks in our project board. Okay, there we go. All right, so now we have those two tasks. We can add another one. And the second one is going to be creating this list. Oh. So a list of all the tasks, essentially. We're just going to call that create list for tasks. Convert to issue. Okay. Now you could go into even more detail, and if you're working on a more proper kind of project, you probably would go into more detail. So for instance, what you could do is you could go into this and you can edit it, and then you can add, oh wait, here. Well, what you could do is you could add things like what needs to get done for this to actually be accomplished. So criteria or something. And then you could say like, okay, we need to have a list of all the tasks. Should be scrollable. And then you can just have those things as all the criteria, and then when you feel like you're done with the task, then you can go to this issue. You can see, okay, what does it have all the criteria? Does it fulfill all the criterion? And if it does, then you can commit, or like, well, if it does, then you can commit. Or you could create like a pull request and you could connect it to this issue. And that is just kind of an easy way to organize all the commits so that all the commits make sense, and make sure that everything is like connected to something in a sense, so that it's just a way to kind of structure the project. We're not going to be super detailed about it, like I said. So we're going to start with just this issue here, creating the nav bar. And we know that that's going to be on top of the screen. So now what we're going to do, I pretty much always use this screen, or this this article that I found for creating nav bars, that I just have to remember what the name of it is. Yep, so this one. And the reason that I'll always use this one is that I like the ability of swiping between the different screens, or between the different tabs, and also being able to press the different tabs, because I feel like that it's more intuitive to be able to swipe between the different screens. And yeah, I just kind of like that design. So now we're gonna actually go into our app, right? Alright, so this is what the app, or the code that we have, looks like right now. now we're running it just to see what it looks like at the moment. Title. Just removing all of the comments because we don't really need them. All right, so now that is what it looks like. We've cleaned it out, so we've removed some of the things that you usually get when you open up a starter project for in Flutter. And now what we're going to do is we're just going to implement this navigation bar essentially. All right, we just copy that and then we paste that here. But we also need to, okay, we're just gonna run that, see if it works. All right, so that works already straight away, which is good. Now what we want to do is, there's something like top navigation bar? Nope. All right, so now we need to figure out how to do a top navigation bar, because right now we have a bottom navigation bar, and that is part of the, yeah, so it's part of the default tab controller, bottom navigation bar. So it doesn't really, and it doesn't seem like it has anything called like top navigation bar. So what we need to do is we need to figure out what thing we can use for a top navigation bar. But I'm not like entirely, it doesn't matter too much to me if we go with a top or a bottom navigation bar. So we might just, for the minimum viable product thing, we might just end up with a bottom navigation bar just because it's faster essentially to do it this way. But we're gonna do a short little Google search and we're gonna see if we can find something that's really simple for how to implement the top navigation bar. And if we can't find that, then I'm gonna give it about like 5 minutes maybe. If I can't find it in 5 minutes, then we're gonna go with the bottom navigation bar. wonder if we can switch, because now this might work. So what we did was just switch bottom navigation bar for AppBar, which could work. Seems like it may have worked. Okay, so that actually does work, but as you can see, we have some issue here with like the top part of the screen covering some of the icons. So what we need to do is, okay, so there's a widget in Flutter called Safe Area Widget, which essentially like protects against this stuff. It adds some space up here so that anything you add on the top of the screen will end up like down below, so that it won't get covered by anything. Okay, so I'm gonna try to just not Google this and just see if I can figure it out. And we're just gonna go Safe Area Widget. Okay, so that worked now. So that moved everything down a little bit more so that we have the navigation bar up on the top. Do we? Okay, so apparently you can't press the buttons now. But I don't think I was able to do that before either. Ta-da-da. All right, now we have 3 tab bars. Okay, so the question is, how do we make something so that we can actually press the things? Why doesn't that work? Usually you do this, and then within this you can type things, and that usually always works for the on tap and on pressed functions, but that doesn't seem to work now for this one, so it's probably some special one. Okay, anyway, okay. AppBar. Okay, so this might be what we're looking for. Let's just copy this and see if we can, if that works straight away. Oh, okay, they have some more things. Okay. Okay, so that works. But we don't want the title, so we're going to remove that. Tab bar is scrollable. Scaffold, AppBar, tab. Okay, I'm just gonna see kind of what it looked like before. Okay, AppBar, tab bar, tabs. In the documentation, it tells material app is not a safe area. Okay. Maybe if we don't wrap this thing, but we wrap the tab bar or something. Body tab scaffold. Okay, wrap this thing. Yep, so wrap that in the safe area widget instead. Okay, see if that works. Okay, so that works now. Apparently it was just because I was returning a safe area widget up here instead of a material app, and it expects a material app. So thank you, Juan Marco, in the comments for that, because that was what helped me solve it. Okay, so that works now. Now we need to actually design this thing to make it look the way that it should look. AppBar, tab bar. Okay, so we're gonna wrap this thing in a container. Yep. Okay, maybe that doesn't work. Scaffold tab bar, alright. Colors.white. So now that is white. Safe area widget, where is that? Alright, the safe area, we're gonna do color. We're going to remove the indicator because we don't want that. So what I want to do is I want to have something below here, and I'm pretty sure that that is possible, but I'm not sure quite in what way. Okay, I think, yeah. All right, I think I have an idea. Container, right? And then we run it just to see that it works the same way that it should, and it seems to be working the same way that it should, which is good. What we do then is we wrap this again, but we wrap it in a column. Children, and then what we need to do is we need to do this widget. All right, so that did not work. So the question is, how do we add something below the AppBar, or the the AppBar? And scaffold. Okay, so this, maybe this works. Yeah, so that seems, I think we have finally found the way to do it. Okay, so that's the title. So now we have that in the title of the app, essentially. What we can do then is we can go body, I think. No. Bottom. Okay, let's try this. Nope, that's not what we wanted. AppBar title content. Nope. Oop. What does the AppBar have within it? Body, scaffold, body, stack. AppBar title, actions, body. All right, so we might, you know what, we could probably do something else. I'm trying to think of like, because there's a couple ways we could do it. We could either have it be like the app bar up here, and then that also has the container below it like this, with the button and all that, so that this is like constant essentially. So when we swipe to another, to this page, for instance, this stays the same, like that thing stays where it is. Or we could do something where this, so the part that's like below the app bar, that is essentially attached to the page that we're at. And I think that is the way to do it right now. So when we're on this page, here is where we have each of those like little folds, or I don't know what to call them, but we'll call them folds for now. Each of those little folds is going to be attached to the page. I don't like that much, because I feel like that the way that it would be better is if this is like constant, and then when you move to a different page, that stays still and just changes kind of what it looks like or what's on the actual fold. But it seems like that is pretty difficult. Scaffold, stack, children, okay. So what if we did this? Grab a new widget. Okay, maybe this will work. Container, height 100. Okay, yeah, I think we solved it. All right, that's good. Now, what we need to do is we need to make the AppBar look the way that it should. We don't want a shadow on it, so elevation, no. All right, so that now has no elevation. Unselected colors. Label color. Okay, so we have this. What we can do now is we can do box decoration, for the radius. Bottom right. Oh yeah. And I always forget this. I think I've said this in another stream, but as soon as you add the decoration to a container in Flutter, you have to remove the color from the container and then move it into the box decoration, which I always forget. So therefore, as soon as I add box decoration, there's always like an error. Okay, so then we have this little bottom part. We're gonna actually set the yellow, we're gonna do gray, just so that it looks a little bit more like the actual app. All right, there we go. Primary. So the reason that this app bar up here is blue is because of this, I believe. But if we do white here, well, let's just try white 10. I'm not sure what that does. Yep. Okay. So for some reason, white is not a material color. So for that reason, it gives us this error. Primary swatch flutters. Okay. The reference duplicate. Use colors.gray. The confusion, I believe, is due to poor naming decision. Okay, so that apparently was not the reason. Tab bar. All right, I think that was the problem. All right, so there we go. Now it looks like that. But if we look at the design, the corners are a little bit more round than we have them right now. So what we need to do is we need to make them even and more round. And the way that we do that is by increasing this number. So we're gonna go 50. Okay, I think that is more what we want. Now we're gonna have to make that a little bit bigger as well. Probably 200. Okay, what do we think? So I think that's a little bit too big, maybe. We're gonna go with 150. All right, is that too little? Okay, that's probably perfect. All right, so now we're gonna add the title. So in tray here, and then we're gonna add the button to this one. And the way that we add, okay, well, let's just start by adding the title. Okay, child, go row. The reason that we need to add a row is because we want the title to be slightly to the left. So we need to have a row here with one object here and one object here. So two objects in a row. And one of them is just going to be an empty container. Like so. And the first one is going to be our text that will say in tray. Oh, we also need to make it or add it in the right place. All right, so that is, now we should also do this, main axis alignment, and then space between. That means that we're gonna maximize the space between all the different things that are in here, which means that this, the text is gonna get put as far to the left as possible, and then the container is going to get put as far to the right as possible. Now we're going to save it and we run it, and it should look like that. So we have in tray here, and the container is probably somewhere over here. Also, what we want to do is we want to add some padding. Edge insets dot only left 50. Okay, so there we go, we have in tray there. What we need to do also is we need to make the size of this bigger, and the right color, and then the right font as well. What we're gonna do for this, I think, is let's create a new folder on the side here, and we'll call that, what are we gonna call it? Models. Right, and then within this, we're gonna create a new file, and we're gonna call that global.dart. Oh, damn it. And within here is where we're gonna actually have all the different text fonts and all that stuff, so that whenever we want to access a certain font, or rather when, for instance, let's say that this font is always going to be the same. So even if we're at a different page, we want to use the same font, the same color, instead of having to create a whole new text object or text style object to get the right style, we can just access the title style or something like that from here. So what we're going to do is we're going to import material, and that is just so that we have access to all the different things. And then we're going to go ahead and create the different colors. So we're going to create a list of all the colors that we use. Color, red color equals new color. And this is where we need to add, I think it's like 0xff and then the color code. So we're gonna start with this one actually, because this is more useful. So we're gonna call this dark gray color. Yep, and this is also a good way to, because if we want to do something where you can choose your own theme or something like that, so you can choose a light theme or a dark theme or something, then having all the colors like this makes it also easier to just change the colors. So if they want to go to a light theme, then we can just change all of these variables to be the light colors. All right, so we have dark gray color. We're going to save that for now. And then we're going to create the text style, title. We're going to call this home. So when I'm trying to figure out like what to name the different variables, the problem here is that I think this is only going to be used here. Like we're not going to have the same font anywhere else or the same size of the font anywhere else, which means that we're really only going to use it once. We might use it twice, and therefore we can name it very specifically to be in tray title color or something like that. But for instance, for these ones, we could name this one, what we call it, task. Let's see if we can come up with this. So task title dark color or something like that, and that is less specific. So we know that that's going to be every time we want to show a card like that, then we know that we only need to access the task title dark color. And I don't know if this makes sense, but yeah. All right, so in tray style equals new text style, font family, and font family is Avenir, and font weight is font weight. Bold, and then we have also color, and that is our dark gray color. And then we also need to set the size of it. So size, I think we're gonna go 40 because I think it's gonna be pretty big. All right, so now we have that. Now we just need to import this into here. Let's see. Okay, so now we can access that and we can set the style here. Style to be in tray title style. All right, so now we've set that. If we run it, now that ends up being a lot bigger and it looks a little bit more the way that we want it to look. I think we still need that to be a little bit bigger. Now this isn't super important, this is like really a little bit too much detail even to actually care about this early. I feel like the size of that title is not super important, especially not if you're creating a minimum viable product, because we only really want something that is semi-useful that we can push out to people so that they can kind of test it and see what they like about it and what they don't like. Indicator colors dot transparent. All right, so that's good. Okay, label color is supposed to be our dark. Now we can access our dark gray color as well. The unselected tabs should be well, let them be blue for now. All right. The background color of this one should also be dark gray color. All right, there we go. We have the dark gray there, and all right, now we need to add the button here so that we actually can add different tasks. And what we want to do is we want to add a button that's like halfway between the different places essentially. And the way that we do that is, so we have a stack here. We're gonna add a floating action button, I think. And then go color child icon. All right, good. And then color. On pressed. Okay, so let's see what that looks like now. All right, so we see we get that up here, and that's actually pretty good because we want to then place that in the right spot. Okay, maybe let's wrap this in a container. Alright, let's run it. And what we do then is we add some margin, edge inset stop only, top 140. Okay, 135. Okay, so that's then in the middle, and now we want it to also be in the center of the screen. So get screen with Flutter. There we go. Multiplied by 0.5. Okay, so that is now placed in the middle. It's not quite in the middle. It's like, I think the way that it works is Flutter looks at this as the starting point of the widget, and therefore that point is in the middle, and then it puts the button at that point. So that's why it's kind of off to the side. So what we need to do is we need to also include the size of the button. So, but first we need to actually decide what size the button's going to be. So, no, okay. I think the way to do this is to add a container in here. Because then we can set the size of this container, size. Okay, let's go 100. Width 100. All right, let's see if we do this size. All right. Okay, so why does that not work? Let's go height 100, oh. Width 100. Okay, so that's why. So we didn't need to wrap that in a container. We can remove that. All right, there we go. But that's a little bit big, I think. Oh. So it's going to be that kind of size, and I think that that is maybe 80. And I think that we also need to actually design our own icons for the plus sign here, because I don't really like that that's so thick. Like compared to this is pretty thin, and I kind of like that that's so thin compared to what we have right now, which is that thing that's pretty big. Okay, so now we know that that is going to be the size 80. We know then that we also need to either add or subtract. I'm not really sure, so we're going to start with subtracting half of the size of the button. Yeah, so that seems to end up in the middle. But then this also needs to be... Alright, so that I think that's pretty much in the middle. What we need to do now is we also need to get the color for this button so that we have the right color. Now this color that we see here, I don't think it's the same one that we actually want because what I did was I built this app or this sort of thing a while ago, and it turns out that that color doesn't really translate to the color that we see here, but I like this color more. But when we add this color into the app, it turns into this color. So that's why I don't think we can add this color. I hope that made sense. All right, copy that. There we go. And now we'll go into our global and we'll add a new color. Paste that and red color. All right. And then we'll set the color of our button to be the red color. And then when we run it, it now turns into this kind of red color. Maybe we should, I'll try it with this one too, just to see if that looks better. Okay, so I think that actually does look a little bit better. So we're going to use that. All right. Floating action button, elevation. 10. I'm not sure what that will do. Okay, I don't think that did much. All right, so now we have that added, so that's good. What we do then is we go here and we do git add dot git commit and what we do is we go to our GitHub account again and we look at the issue that we created. So this one. And then we copy this and then we just paste that in here and then we do git push all right, so then when we go here, we look at the commits, we can see that we have this connected to this. Yeah, so that's connected then to this issue, which is good because that means that we've then finished this issue. Essentially. So what we can do is we can go to our project board. We should have moved this into this place first and then move it into testing. We don't really need to test this that much. So we're just going to move it into completed straight away. And what we're going to do, we go to this one and then we close the issue. All right. So that means that is done. And now the next thing is to, top bar and button, create the nav bar. We did that too actually, so we can close this one out as well. And this is the difficult part, that's like, I've been doing these things and I forget to just commit and add it to GitHub and by doing this sort of stuff, it's easier to make it so that you actually can track what you've done basically. Now I've already just done those two things in one, which really isn't what I wanted to do. But it's not super important for right now. All right, we can move this into in progress. And now let's add our list. Tab. we're going to create a new folder, and we're going to create a folder called UI. And then within this, we'll create a folder for our in-tray page, and within this, we'll create a folder or a file called in-tray page.dart. All right, and we'll do import material. And what we want to do is we want to essentially just create this thing. We'll copy that, paste that here, and then we'll remove all of this. And we'll call this in-tray page. It doesn't need a title. We're going to remove this actually. And we're going to call this in-tray page state. So all right, so there we go. And what we're gonna do here is we're gonna return a container for now, and this is gonna be colors dot red, and it's gonna have a height of 100 and a width of 100. And then main, so here we want to basically get, so this is where we want to show that page. So we just created a page essentially, and now we want that to respond to the right tab. So what we're gonna do is we're going to add a child here, and that's going to be in-tray page. Okay, now we run it. Okay, so that adds it up there, which is not where we want it to be added. Oh yeah, here we go. That's why. So we need that to be here, in-tray page. There we go. And now when we run it, I think it should look, yeah, so there we go. We have the in-tray page here. And now we can just go ahead and edit this in here. So we're gonna do dark gray color, import, run it, and now it's gray again. We can actually remove the height and that stuff. And now we can go ahead and build out our list. And what we want to do, I think, is just have a list view straight away. View. Get list. And then we'll create a method here. List widget get list. Okay, and that should then return a list of a ton of widgets. Oh. So what we want here could be like several containers, just to see if this works. This one can be colors dot red. Copy that and then paste it here, add a comma, and then we set the color here to be green. And this is just to demonstrate and to see whether it works or not. Okay, now if we run it, we don't get anything. Oh yeah, fuck, that's stupid. The reason that we didn't get anything is because we haven't set the size of them. So we need to set the height, let's say 100. I think that is all that we need. I don't think that we need to set the width. Green. Save. But it didn't give us an error at least, so that's good. But there you go, you see we have a list up there. What we also need to do is we need to add some padding, or yeah, padding, edge insets dot only, top, and that should be 140. Okay, that probably needs to be even more. Oh yeah, there was something. Wasn't this like, because right now if we do this, that means that the list stops there. So let's say that we do 300. So right now the list stops in the middle, so that means that if we scroll, it's just gonna look kind of weird because the list just disappears into the middle of the page. What we would like instead is like that it would disappear beneath here in like a smooth way, so it shouldn't be like a line here where it disappears into. It should just like, so if we do like we did before, 150, save it, run it, you see there's like a line here, and if we pull up, it still disappears into that line, so it doesn't disappear smoothly. And also if we try to fix that and make it so that the list starts even higher up, then we get a different problem. And the problem is that if we have a task up here, then we can't really see that task unless we pull down. So what we want to do is we want the list itself to kind of start with all the tasks pushed down a little bit. And I feel, from what I remember last time I did something similar to this, there's actually something in list view where you can do this, where it's like it starts a little bit down. All right, let's see, list view Flutter. Okay, it's that simple. So the thing was just to add, instead of adding the padding to the container, you just add it to the list view and it takes care of that itself. So, so now it starts in the right place, or not exactly the right place, but it starts in a better place. Okay, so that's probably where we wanted it to start. And then essentially it's just going to be a long list of all the tasks that we have. Something like that. And then we can just scroll through all of that list, essentially. Okay, so now we've gotten started on that. I think that the next step is going to be to actually make some of the backend work so that we can then pull some data into this and pull some notes in here, or some to-dos. And, or well, we can actually, all right, so it's been like an hour and a half, I think, of the stream. And so I think this is going to be the end of today's stream. And the next time, in next episode or next session, next Monday, what we're going to do is we're going to go to actually design the cards here for all the different tasks. And then after we've designed that, depending on how long that takes, we're going to get into some of the backend stuff. So starting to build out the REST API. I'm not sure whether we're going to do that in the next one or whether we're going to start by just creating the different objects in here. So what we would do is create files for all the things like task.dart, and then create classes for the different stuff that we want to have in the app. So I think that's all right. So that is what we're going to do next week. I'm deciding it right now so that I don't have to think about it next week. So this is what we're going to do. Next week we're going to build the cards. So these little things here, that's going to show a list of all the tasks that we have essentially. And once we've done the design of those cards, then we're going to go into and create the different classes that we're going to need. And once we've done that, the next step will be to start building out the REST API and start pulling some real data into the app. So I hope you enjoyed this little this part 2 of the build, and I can see that a few of you have been pretty active in the chat, so I appreciate that. I'm going to go through and read that after I've finished. But yeah, that's pretty much it for this one, and I hope you enjoyed it, like I said, and I hope you look forward to the next one, and I hope you join me in the next one as well. So if you haven't already understood it, I'm going to be streaming this build every Monday at 2 p.m. And the end time is supposed to be just 1 hour, but I feel like it's hard to just stick to 1 hour because it's a little bit short to get the stuff built that I want to get built. But yeah, that's it for this one.